this for a long time. I'm on year 36 right now. I just turned 60. This is my third company really. It's called tastytrade. I think it should be up there, tastytrade. tastytrade is an online financial digital media company of which we decided that we wanted to do something different. We didn't know anything about media, so you go challenge things that you don't know anything about and you have some fun with it. And we just launched a brokerage firm called Tastyworks. It's the fastest growing brokerage firm in the history of finance, if you can qualify financial service or finance. It's online. It's an online software platform and web-based and mobile and everything else. But it's a cool piece of technology that really scales our message. I decided to list a couple of things because I'm lucky. I get an opportunity at this point in my life to talk to people all around the country. I've been on the road for 17 years talking about finance. I'm a finance junkie, and I love to talk about finance because it's a weird industry. It doesn't get the respect it deserves, and because we don't treat it, and part of it's an issue with academia, part of it's an issue with the profession itself, and part of it's just a perception issue. But one of the coolest things about finance is it's the ultimate intellectual challenge. And it's unlike any other business because in the world of finance, you can test your logic, you can test theory, you can test your smarts, you can test your know-how because there's an efficient public marketplace to test all your strategies. So what I did for you today, and I always like to put together some slides, let's see. Okay, so I put 5 things to know to make finance a differentiator because when I was your age, first of all, we didn't have entrepreneurship programs. We barely had, business programs in school. And so any of us that came out and wanted to, the trading world in Chicago was kind of the last frontier of what's now called, entrepreneurship. At that point, we used to think of it as free market capitalism and everything else. But the neat thing is we've come a long way. And my biggest hang-up with most of the graduating classes, whether we're talking undergraduate, grad school, or even PhD level, is just kind of an ability for individuals to differentiate themselves. So I spend a lot of time, and I do this on weekends and at nights, flying around the country, just talking to students at all different institutions, and just talking about, differentiation. When you talk to me and you're going for an interview, or you talk to me and you're looking to do something with us, I want people that can tell me, I don't want you to tell me what I necessarily want to hear. I want you to tell me what you believe and how you're different from everybody else. Everybody's smart. Somehow you got to us, your foundation through academia is very good and it's solid. But I want you to tell me, what differentiates you. So I put together a little discussion today about 5 things to know to make finance a differentiator. I'll spend about 2 minutes on each one and then we'll move on. Building non-traditional strategic know-how. That's the first key. I don't want to hear that you have strong technical analysis skills. I don't want to hear that you're really good at reading a balance sheet or that you have strong fundamental skills. I want to hear how you can apply strategic logic to a situation. I want to be able to hear you explain to me how you can connect the dots when it comes to finance. For example, Netflix had earnings this afternoon. How do you trade that if it's a 1-hour binary event? The market's at all-time highs. What is the strategic play at all-time highs if you're not necessarily bullish here? I want to hear how you play the market and take advantage of all the products that everybody here is discussing today. They're discussing futures, they're discussing options, they're discussing stocks. Are you truly understand kind of product indifference or strategic indifference? Do you understand the importance of strategic diversification being even more important, particularly more important than product diversification? All those things are really important. If you're going to differentiate yourself to me or somebody else in an interview process, that's what I want to hear. And so one of the first things that's super important just to be able to get out there is really give me something that's non-traditional. I want to hear non-traditional strategy. Second, I want to make sure that you understand the math, because in today's world, if you don't understand the math, man, it's a little concerning. I want to get that you understand that you get the models that go into building theoretical value. I don't care if you can write the models. I do care a little bit about how much you can code and how much understanding you have of different languages. But most important to me is that the math makes sense, that you understand that theoretical value works. And there's a reason that we get to a certain point in pricing. You understand how expected move works. You understand how little importance we assign to historical moves and how much importance we assign to expected move. I want you to understand that implied volatility essentially equals expected move, and that we can trust the numbers because of marketplace efficiency. Somebody was up here, I can't remember if it was the first or second speaker, but was up here and said something to the effect that the US markets are kind of like the global hub of liquidity. That's why they're so wonderful. And so when you get very truly liquid markets, you have very accurate expected value. When you have expected value, you can kind of make judgments, like 68% of the time the market's going to stay within a certain range, or 95% of the time the market's going to stay within a regulatory range. That gives you a lot of perspective and a lot of context around what you're about to do strategically, and that's so important. And most kids that get out of school, I don't care what the degree is, don't really understand how efficient the pricing is. And also we don't understand how overpriced fear is. So some of the things that go into kind of that strategic discussion about differentiating yourself is, hey, Tom, I realize that fear is overpriced. Therefore, expected move, if you limit your profitability, is understated. And expected move, is overstated. And if expected move, if you want unlimited profitability, is understated. Those are really key things. Next is the importance of trading and quick decision making. You know, there's very few places where you can test your skills. There's very few places where you can go out and say, I want to see if this strategy works with a limited amount of capital, and there's very little importance placed on decision making. You know, one of the neat things about trading, investing, and understanding where we are, especially if you're in Chicago, especially if you have an opportunity to participate in the markets, and especially now because the technology is so good and the access is so easy. You know, there is a certain amount of life skills that come with decision making. And there's very few places that you can go out and make an unlimited amount of decisions. Just think about it. How many decisions can you make in a normal course of day, week, month, life, whatever it is, where there's an emotional and there's a monetary outcome where you can feel something from it? I mean, of course, we can make decisions when there's which channel to choose. But let's make decisions where there's a monetary issue at the end, meaning it's good or bad, and there's an emotional attachment to that monetary decision. That's real decision making. Where can you make real decisions? It's very hard to find places where you can go in and there's an outcome to those decisions. But in the trading markets, for a very small amount of money, because you can spread positions off, you can do lots of different things. You can use as little as $50 to $100 to a few hundred to a few $1,000s. It doesn't make any difference. It's whatever you're capable of doing. But you can make literally tens to hundreds of decisions in a very short period of time. What is the single most important factor to building skill and to really, and to being able to impress somebody with your logic? It's how many decisions you've made, how many decisions you can make, how confident are you in your decisions, and how do you build that confidence? It's through the repetition of making as many decisions as possible, and very few people understand that. I believe the single most dangerous thing we have in finance today is passive investing. Yet, 99% of the capital allocated is through passive investing. Why is this so dangerous? Because nobody learns anything. Because nobody understands. It's a bull market phenomenon. And nobody understands the downside to passive investing. Everybody puts your money in something. If you take away all responsibility, you make absolutely no decisions, you learn nothing. Next thing you know, today you're 22. Next thing you know, in 40 years, you wake up, you're 62, you know absolutely nothing, except you studied it when you were 22. The most important thing we can do when we're 22 or 20 or 18 or 32 or 42 or 52, it doesn't matter, is make as many trading decisions as you can, which forces you into a position where all of a sudden the way your mind works is completely different. And as you'll see on the next slide, what it does is it gives you the ability to value goods and services. And it doesn't matter if you stay in the world of finance or if you go into some other profession or some other kind of career. It doesn't make any difference what the field is. But your ability to value goods and services changes everybody's perception around you. And there's no way to build that skill set that I've ever seen except through the trading world, where you can make as many repetitive moves and strategic moves with legitimate outcomes, and real outcomes, I should say, to change the way your mind works. It's essentially an intellectual challenge that changes the way you do business forever. Just think about that. There's tons of studies on this too. There's a lot of University of Chicago studies. There's probably studies from other places. They call the inability to value goods and services economic bias. And all these studies have been done with just making a bunch of different decisions on eBay, just making a bunch of different decisions anywhere where there's kind of a two-sided market, regardless of the efficiency of that two-sided market. And if you make 20 trades on eBay, your decision-making ability goes up by something like 1,000%. Well, imagine if you make 500, 1,000, or 10,000 trades every year for the next 10 years, or 20 years, or 50 years, whatever it is. And all of a sudden, you think differently than everybody else. You can assess pot odds, probability of profit, legit logic, strategic logic. Completely different mindset, and it's how you work. That's how you create an intellectual challenge. And very few people understand that. Most people end up in the world of finance, you end up in some kind of a sales position where you're essentially gathering assets for some firm so they can annuitize the capital they bring in, and you learn nothing. And the customer learns nothing. And it's a horrible cycle. And the cycle of people, and the real size of the universe of people that actually know how to manage their own money, or are active with their own money, or are strategic with their own money is tiny. And at least you have the opportunity to be part of that. And lastly, it's applicable domain expertise. Because it's one thing to kind of sit here and study and learn and really understand that everything that the professors and your internships and everything else is teaching you. But until you can apply it, there's not much value to it. So, we've built over $1 billion in businesses, and we've hired over 1,000 people just in Chicago. And most of them young. The average age at our firm is 26 years old. And we look for people that think a little bit differently because they've had experience applying. One of the first questions we ask, unlike other firms, have you ever traded? And if you have traded, what do you trade? And how do you trade? And what strategies do you use? Who asks those questions? We do all the time because we like to just know what's in people's heads. Or if you don't have the capital, then what would you do if you could? And again, it's all about applicable domain expertise. I call it, another thing I say, it's about monetizing your know-how. One of the key takeaways from this, and I'm out of time, so I'll go, but one of the key takeaways from this is when you leave this room, just think to yourself, hey man, I just spent a lot of money, and I spent a lot of time, and I worked really hard. How do I monetize my know-how? And I think you do it through making lots and lots of decisions. Thanks so much.